Kennedy's had been impacted. The schools that have been most impacted on enrollment have kind of been in the middle of the district. Monte Vista, Kennedy, Mackin. We're not sure, other than that tended to be approximately 6, 7, 8 years ago when I arrived in the district. We had humongous numbers of multifamily homes, especially around the Mackin area. And so you'll see as we look at the charts, those multifamily homes have gone way down. We have very few of them today, but that was where an awful lot of our student population was coming from.
Ed, do these, a couple of years ago or so, I know we're busing from the Mackin area
To at that time Squaw Peak.
Yeah, at that time Squaw Peak. And we also changed the Loma Linda and Kennedy boundaries for walking, for neighborhood schools. Has that also impacted the numbers? I mean, is it part of your equations that it goes down because more of the kids that might have gone to Kennedy are now going to the Loma Linda, that type of thing?
We actually, yeah, that was actually changed back, but at the same time, as you'll see on this slide here, we actually, remember 2 years ago, approved giving back a section from the Monte Vista area to Kennedy, because as we moved the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders back into Mackin or Monte Vista, their population was going up. Oddly enough, even with the moving of the boundary back into Kennedy, and with moving the students from at that time Squaw Peak to Mackin, you'll see here shortly that Mackin's actually had a...
All during this time frame that these charts are being done, we're, that as a board, are going around the boundaries of each school.
Correct. But in actuality, we were putting more students into the Kennedy and Mackin attendance areas, yet their population has still gone down even more. So when you look at Mackin in a couple slides here, you'll see a bigger impact. But Kennedy has had a 13.5% loss since approximately 2003. Loma Linda was fairly steady until last year. Again, last year we had our largest loss. They had one of the larger losses of students, and that was 19% in that single year. The next one is Mackin. The 2008-9 school year was a school year that we stopped busing the students from Squaw Peak at that time to Mackin, with the exception of the 8th graders that we allowed to stay, and some of those 8th graders also had family students that were allowed to stay until they promoted to high school. So as you look at this, when you look at from 2005-6 at 845 to 653, they've actually had a negative 24%. So they've lost 24% of their students, and at the same time, we pushed 250 students back to Mackin. So when you really look at that number, they've had a much greater loss than just the 24%. They've probably had more closer to a 35 to 40% loss overall in the population. Monte Vista, as we started moving students in 2008-9, actually it was the 2007 year that we started moving kids in. We completed that last year with the boundary change to Kennedy. They have come up. They were impacted a little bit last year, but as you can see this year they're only down 1.06. So that seems to be steady on over there. Papago School, as you saw, Creighton and Papago School, Loma Linda, those three schools tended to be our largest schools, 2002-03 timeframe. Papago has lost, they lost 9.52% last year, but as you can see, they've gained 3.21% back this year. And in fact, after the opening of the new school, we saw a 55 student raise just since they opened the school.
Yeah. So, but we were still gaining new enrollees at Papago while the school was demolished.
Correct. They actually did go down at the beginning of the year.
Uh-huh.
We're not sure if that was parents not wanting to go to other schools,
Right.
but it appears that all of those families have come back.
Okay.
So it's been a very good use of time ago.
Good.
Fillmore Prep, again, very deceiving because of the fact that we stopped busing the students from Mackin attendance area up to Squaw Peak. But as you can see, they've had a great year this year, 31% gain in students. Obviously, the larger they get, the less impact that's going to have. But we truly want to continue that gain to get back up. Are there any questions on enrollment or the longitudinal data?
I'm just curious if there are more things we could do to entice people to come here. I know in the past it was the condo conversions, economy, immigration, a number of reasons why we've had declining enrollment, achievement. Like now we're doing so many great things. I don't know if there's other ways we can market ourselves. I think we're doing great things.
And we continue to look at those things. In our next section, I'll talk about what we're trying to do to get kids here in the beginning of the year, because it has a direct impact on the funding that we get. But we've tried to do some great things through the communicator, through publicity and marketing of some of our school programs. And it's just getting it out there and getting the available students here.
Could we just do, because you just talked about Biltmore Prep, Dr. Wagner and I met with Faith yesterday, and they had quite a rigorous kindergarten roundup a week or so ago, and right now they have 65 students, parents who are filling out packets to come, and they're getting ready to do some additional marketing too. First grade has gone up 2 this year. The kinders, there's 50 kinders, and there's other applications that brings the first grade for next year up to 60. So we believe that we're going to see some significant growth, and we're still just in early February. So there's a marketing plan also. Dr. Rond.
Just that Faith is also shared with us that not only are we picking up those kindergartners and first graders, but older siblings are beginning to show up in the upper grades. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a little push up beyond those grades as well, which is nice to hear.
And so the letters went out yesterday to the families, assuring them that if they want to bring their children to Biltmore Prep next fall, that there's a space for them, and then also there's a response that the parents need to make to the site. So we're encouraged by this information.
How's the immersion program going? Is that what's bringing them in?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, and you also mentioned that they were nominated, one of 4 schools nominated for a Blue Ribbon Award. How does that work? How do we know if we win, and then how do we maximize that?
Well, there's an application phase. There were 5 schools in Arizona that were nominated by the ADE, and they received the letter that they could apply for this nomination. And so there's already been 2 press releases to the Arcadia News and to one of the other news organizations, and so I believe that that will be part of the marketing for Biltmore Prep if they are to receive the award, and we think that they have a really excellent chance of being chosen.
Dr. Warren, back on the enrollment, with Biltmore Prep and the 65 possible packets, packets coming back and all that, I know Faith isn't here now or anything. Do you have any idea if they're in district or out of district primarily? Are we attracting the kids to our neighborhood school, or are we bringing the other kids in? I mean, we want both, but A neighborhood school should be a neighborhood school.
Well, and the students in the neighborhood have first seats.
Right, I know that.
Yeah. So the kindergarten roundup was widely advertised through the Biltmore Prep attendance area, excuse me, and also outside of that.
But
So we don't know.
you don't
Right,
know. Okay,
right.
thanks.
Mhm.
Just wondered.
Yeah.
On two other notes, one of the other things that is helping out with Biltmore Prep right now is the fact that they've got an extremely strong PTO. They've done some great fundraisers. They're actually purchasing technology in the classrooms. They're doing an awful lot of things, and that alone gets the word out. You know, when parents who are active in the PTO are active in the neighborhood or at their workplace and so forth, and they talk about the great things going on within Creighton School District, that helps us as well. At the same time, we're getting ready to do some press releases. As you saw last month, the iAchieve program, which was our iPod program, was selected as one of only 49 nationwide Apple distinguished programs, so the press releases will be going on that. So we're going to try and leverage that as well, because 7 of those schools are not Biltmore Prep. So any advertising or marketing that we can do will be good for that. On the next slide, I put this slide in here specifically to show some of the things we've done as far as marketing and some of the things that we've done to try and get every student here. If you look at day 1 in 2003-04, it was 7,380 students. By day 5, we had 8,163. That's a 783 student difference. Now, this is after the 10-day drops have been done, so this data is clean. But what that means is for every day we don't get an ADM count for a child, for each child is $34. And just to give you an idea, the cost of day 1 of that year, comparing it to day 5, I didn't compare it to day 10, but day 5, cost the district $26,000 in ADM alone. If those students had been here 5 days earlier, we would have gotten $26,000 more that year in M&L, and that's direct costs. That year, just those 5 days, is a guesstimate of $57,600 of unattainable funding for those first 5 days. That's a 10% gain in 5 days, but that means that 10% of our students weren't here for 5 days of instruction, which is one of the most critical pieces for us. At the same time, the district wasn't being paid for those 5 days either. Compared to this year, there's only a 101 student difference between day 1 and day 5, which is only a 1.6% difference. What we've done is we do door hangers now, we do flyers. The principals are all sending letters home at the end of the year. We're doing robocalls to all those parents who are already enrolled in the district, reminding them of when the start date is and so forth, and it really appears to be making a difference. We've cut that by 8.4% since 2003-04.
How does our start date compare to our neighbors?
In actuality, because of the fact that we moved back into August, it's actually in line with the rest of our neighbors,
Okay.
and it's much closer to. When I first got here, an awful lot of conversation was around the Camelback start date and whether bigger brothers or sisters were at home or not at home to take care of the kids when they got out of elementary school. And so we're much more in line with Camelback High School now as well.
Good.
Wasn't, years ago, I remember a lot of kids, children, their parents would take them to Mexico for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't the bill 1060?
That's HB 1070.
Whatever. To get back into the country had some effect, and also the various crime waves that are going on with the drug cartels in Mexico. The people I know that used to go to Mexico for the summer are no longer going.
Correct.
And so I'm assuming a large portion of our families with children are not going, a large portion of them, so they're here for the start date as before they come back whenever to start school?
I think there's multiple factors, because of HB 1070, because of the economy. Number one, an awful lot of the families that were in multifamily homes were ones that went back to Mexico for the summer and so forth. Again, in the loss of students, when you lose almost 2,000 students in a 7-year period, the students that did leave, I think an awful lot of those were the ones that were visiting back and forth. And it was difficult sometimes to get the families to come back to start school. The schools down there didn't start until much later in the year, and so it wasn't a priority to them to come back and start school. The families we have in Creighton have made it a priority and are coming back to school sooner, and that's helping out an awful lot.
What role do the parent liaisons play in helping make sure kids come to school on the first day?
The parent liaisons are part of our whole program. Again, with the robocalls, they help us put those together. They help us identify families that may be high risk. So it's a big team effort between the principals, the administrations at the sites, and the administration of the district office, that we try to do everything that we can to educate our parents, and more importantly, keep putting it in front of their face that it starts on August 10th. And that seems to be working. It's just those parents that we don't know that are out there, that don't have students in the district, that we don't have a contact name or phone number for those neighborhood groups, would be really great. But again, that's why we went to the door hangers, was so that and we overlap a little bit on the door hangers. So there's a few Madison parents and a few Osborne parents and a few Scottsdale parents that get our door hangers as well, saying, hey, we're starting on August 10th. So we're trying to get as many students here as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Just one other thing. Through Ed's department, we also do have summer registration on a daily basis at district office, so families can register at any time.
Ed, we didn't talk about this, but I'm wondering if this year we could take a look at the individual mobility rates of each school. Just in terms of having conversations and watching what's going on at each school, it seems like certain schools seem to be more stable than they were in the past in terms of their mobility rate, and that affects a lot.
It does, and in fact, it's you can almost do a study on Papago.
Yeah.
Papago's been one of our most stable schools for the longest time, and it seems to be the community.
And it also seems that Creighton School seems to be...
Until last year and this year, Creighton and Papago were our two most stable schools throughout the whole last 10 years.
Creighton lost a lot of kids, but in terms of the overall mobility rate throughout the course of the year, that's what I'm wondering. Are we running? I mean, we know that our district's been around 40, but I'm just wondering by school what that looks like, if we're getting more stability in the families that are living in those areas.
And in Infinite Campus, we've actually built a report called the Stability Report, not the Mobility Report, but the Stability Report. And so we're starting to look at those to see what is our mobility rate, because mobility is stability minus enrollment. So it's trying to figure out mobility as to whether a student went to Monte Vista from Papago but then came back 4 weeks later. How do you determine that mobility? So it gets really difficult to figure those out.
One of the reasons I bring that up is, as Dr. Boyle and I have lunch with kids, we have a series of questions that we ask them, and one of them is, how long have you been at this school? And it used to be, out of 9 students, you'd have 8 of them tell you they've been at that school somewhere between 1 and 4 years, and they're usually 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Now most of them are, at least half or more of them are telling us they've been here since preschool or kindergarten. So we're just wondering if in certain schools, if we're getting more stability within the community, that's resulting in kids staying over time.
Yeah, and it goes back to, I know that we've had an awful lot of conversations over the last, 4 years about HB 1070 and the impact that it's had on our students. And I keep seeing, when you look at it, you can't, parents not gonna say I'm leaving because of HB 1070. Some of them will, but very few of them will do it in a way that you can record. But we've seen a huge impact of the economy. And the fact when you have families whose income is on the edge, it only takes 0.25% economical change to put them in a very bad situation. So for them, any fluctuation in the economy, especially in the negative, has more impact than it does on some of our other neighbors. So we really saw a huge impact on our families, and some of them just could no longer afford to be here. So they moved to other locations that had a better economy, or wherever they could get a job. So we saw a huge impact on the economical impact on those families in poverty. And we've even seen a slight decline in our free and reduced lunch demographic. It's not huge, but it is a decline. This was the fun part of this. School district capacity studies. The top graph across there just gives Creighton to Biltmore in the district. And then the bottom one actually puts them lowest capacity to highest capacity or usage on the bottom chart. And capacity is not utilized to determine truly what your usage is. It's really determined by SFB to determine when and where you can get a new school or you can get funding to build a new building. So that's where they come up with their formulas. That impacts how they determine capacity. And I'm going to point out Gateway and Excellencia, two almost identical schools with approximately 5,000 square foot difference. But if you look at the number in capacity between Excellencia and Gateway, Excellencia's capacity is way over Gateway's, which does not equate to a 5,000 square foot difference. But it's determined by SFB's formula of how they determine capacity. And let me point out, to determine Gateway's capacity, you take the square footage, and since the hallways at Gateway are internal, you're allowed to take 10% of the square footage off before you determine your capacity. Once you take that 10% off, you divide that by 88.5 square feet per student, and that gives you your capacity. The reason for that is because we use no funding of SFB for Gateway. Excellencia, we used SFB funding to build Excellencia. So the formula completely changes. Number one, you can't take the 10% for inside hallways off. So it's full square footage. The other issue is when you look at that, it's divided by 80 square feet per student, not 88.5. So that's why it says 1,399 student capacity for Excellencia and only 1,123 for Gateway when the schools are almost identical in size. Now Papago, this is the new, this is not official. SFB, the counselor at SFB helped me figure that one out. So it should be right around 1,000. They do have internal hallways as well as external, but they do qualify for the 10% removal of square footage and the 88.5%. That brings it to a capacity of 1,000 students. Any questions on how that was figured out?
No, but when they first started designing Papago, did they design it for 1,200 or 1,100?
11.
And then we knocked it.
And we knocked the four classrooms off.
Mm-hmm.
So that dropped it to 1,000.
Yeah,
And that's approximately right where Orcott Winslow had determined when they were doing the design, that it would take care of approximately 1,000 students. Overall, the district utilization, according to the SFB calculation, is 71%. And on the next slide, it's just basically the graph of the usage of our chart, of the usage. Highest usage at the top, lowest usage on the bottom. questions on capacity? We do have two preschool leases up at Biltmore Preparatory Academy. One is Little Big Minds and the second one is Covenant. And this just gives you some information on what's being used by those two preschools. Little Big Minds uses Building O, 605 and 606. Building P, which are classrooms 600 through 604. So they basically have 600 through 606, the whole backside of the campus. Total square footage of 7,598 square foot. And the lease price is $2,800 per month is what we're currently getting from Little Big Minds. Covenant is utilizing building rooms 404, 405, and 406 in building F, 305, 6, 7, and 8 in building B, and their offices in room 104. So they're in 3 different wings on the east side of Squaw Peak. Their total usage is 5,267 square feet, and their lease price is $3,000 per month.
Are they not both self-contained? We don't do anything for them, like meals or anything?
I don't believe we do meals at all.
Covenant does it all on their own. I think the only thing extra that Little Big Minds, they've asked to use, if they can use copiers and that kind of stuff, and we've allowed them as long as they provide their own materials and paper. So essentially, yes, they run on their own. I think another difference is that Covenant has their own direct phone lines, where Little Big Minds uses our system and goes through our front office.
And then we provide technology support and internet access and so forth to them. They don't utilize any of our email access or anything like that. They just use it for internet access only. And at the same time, there's some, as we found out yesterday, Little Big Minds, there are 24 students coming from Little Big Minds to the kindergarten class at Biltmore Preparatory Academy, and 5 students are coming from Covenant. So it rolls right into the program that was developed 2 years ago at Squaw Peak, or excuse me, at Biltmore.
If the pattern of growth at Squaw or Biltmore continues, I think we're maybe a year away. Next year, I believe we'll be okay, but we're going to have some conversations about space availability in the way as that school continues to grow. So we don't have a hard plan in place, but I am working with Ed and Roy and Faith Bertamic to kind of project out the enrollment, the space required, needed, and where, not so much for next year, but for the following year. So that if we in fact have to reduce their square footage or in fact ask them to leave because we don't have the space, we can give them that heads up early that they can be planning.
And what's the enrollment for each of the groups?
We don't know that, and it's hard. We haven't asked it, number one, but it's also challenging because of who comes when, and there's total enrollment, but that doesn't mean they have all those kids at the same time on the campus. It's because they have kids who come for morning care, kids who come for part of the day, kids who come for the whole day, kids who come for aftercare. So their total enrollment is probably larger than the number that are actually on campus at any given time.
But when you look at the fact that 18% of Squaw Peak's current square footage is being utilized by Covenant and Little Big Minds, it starts to take, that takes Biltmore Preparatory Academy's overall usage well over 50%. So as they start to get bigger, it is going to start impacting.
Yeah.
And the other point of consideration is that both schools, but especially Little Big Mind, serves as a bench for the foreign language immersion kindergarten program. And when one of the things that Faith told us, of those 20 plus students, 4-year-olds who are ready now to go into kindergarten, most of those students are out of district. And so that has really then again created a bench for kindergarten enrollment, almost a class full. So, you know, our staffing will depend on that enrollment, but we'll make sure that in-district students have a place either in the mainstream or in the foreign language immersion.
And are these the only 2 leased spaces in the entire district? Not just for preschool purposes, but for any purposes?
Outside of Head Start, Southwest Behavioral, I don't believe we have any other leased preschools on our campuses.
No, the only other leases we have are those kind of hit and miss leases where somebody needs a facility for a meeting, or I think we have a homeowners association that meets here once in a while, but it's nothing significant.
Thank you.
Pam, behind you.
Just so you know, the supplemental educational services that we are required to provide, we do charge the providers a fee for using our classroom space for delivering those services after school. It's not a lot of money, and it's at a discounted rate because it benefits our students that they are paying for the space they're using.
Thank you.
With looking at the whole picture, this was part that I brought into the agenda. And basically, it wasn't to make a decision or put something on the school board agenda, motion or anything else like that. But we're looking at $1.5 million in the hole this year. The economy does look like the best of all possible worlds, as Voltaire would say. Everything will come out. You know, the enrollment will come up, the economy will come up, everything will be hunky-dory, and we can tend our own gardens. But it sometimes doesn't work out that way. Right now, we're, for the next school year, it's $1.5 million in the hole. We gotta figure out where to cut various things to get $1.5 million to come out equal. We have bonds that we can't sell to work on the next school. And if it keeps on going like that, I think Matt said last meeting or something like that, it's gonna take 5 to 6 years. Not this board, we're okay, but the future boards are going to have to look at some very hard discussions. Right now, BP is increasing their enrollment. Mackin is bringing it down. But we're going to have to look at, as a board, like other school districts are. Where can we cut? Do we close a school, and which school would it be? We're probably not going to do it this year. But it's something, when the schools were built, Dr. Boyle has the numbers. I mean, they have the capacity and all that, but Creighton in the past has gone through historically low numbers. Kennedy at 300, 400 kids at various times during the 50s and 60s. It wasn't until more 80s that everything exploded. Of course, the fundings was different and everything else was different during that time when we did have a lower number of students and could keep, we didn't have Gateway, we didn't have Excellencia, keep maintaining a school district. But with the funding cuts and all that, it's just something to look at to keep in the back of your mind with all this. This is where we're at, and these are the schools that are coming up, these are the schools that are coming down, where we are in capacity in utilizing the schools.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Are we on time?
have to wait again?
So 11:30, 35-minute break.
Holy cow.
Because I don't like to go to the